In the words of David Attenborough, the natural world is the greatest source of excitement, the greatest source of visual beauty, and the greatest source of intellectual interest. It is the greatest source of so much in life that makes life worth living. A very good morning to all. I am Srinidhi, a member of the Youth Red Cross Association and host for the day. I, on behalf of the entire Youth Red Cross VIT, welcome you all to this event. Today is the 26th of September, or as we can also call it, the World Environmental Health Day. In today's event, we'll be discussing about the various threats to our environment and how we can together preserve and tend to the world in which we live. The nature already has everything it needs. From the water to the air to the plants and animals, everything has an important role that maintains a perfect balance. When this balance is disrupted, there arises so many problems. Humans over the years have slowly disturbed this cycle by producing toxic wastes and overusing resources. We're creating conditions that will eventually not be able to support and sustain life. This World Environmental Health Day, we talk about just this, preventing further degradation of this beautiful environment that we live in. This year's theme is prioritizing environmental health for healthier communities and global recovery. It is undisputed that human health and environmental health are very closely related. We should give more importance to the significance of environmental health in communities. The rural and urban communities must be made aware of the significance of environmental health to save the generation from the worst possible health hazards. The pandemic situation can be effectively kept under control if people are ready to give more importance to environmental health. I'd now like to call upon Fahim to give us a brief history on this day and what it stands for.
History of World Environment Health Day. World Environment Health Day is annually observed in many countries around the world on September 26th. The observance was inaugurated in 2011 in Indonesia. World Environmental Health Day was launched by an International Federation of Environmental Health, popularly known as the IFEH Council. This organization disseminates knowledge about environmental health among people and promotes cooperation between people to improve the environmental situation of our planet. In 2011, the IFEH Council launched the first observation of WEHD in Indonesia. To that occasion, Indonesian student activists composed a special hymn and performed it to celebrate the launch of this event. Already, in 2012, the event was observed in Africa and Europe, and by 2013, it was supported by Canadian, British, American, Australian, and Asian activists. Every year, the IFEH announces a special theme and organizes various activities to draw public attention to the problems of environment. The organization calls on every person around the world to participate in these events. Objectives of World Environmental Day. The World Environmental Day is recognized and celebrated on the 26th of September every year by many countries around the world. The main focus of this day is to create awareness about the environmental factors that directly or indirectly affect the human health. As mentioned before, this day was launched by the International Federation of Environmental Health, IFEHT, also focuses on scientific and technical research and exchange of ideas for the same. IFEH recognized this day for us to determine and minimize factors that deteriorate environmental health and to adopt and capitalize ways of sustainable development. They put forward the message that human health and environmental health are very closely related. So, if we want to advance human health, then we must preserve environmental health. Pollution. Pollution refers to the contamination of the environment with substances that degrade the quality of the environment. There are 5 major types of pollutants. Air pollution. We call air polluted when it has many suspended particles like dirt, grime, toxic gases, and noxious chemicals. One of the major sources of air pollution is from vehicles and automobile exhaust. All these suspended particles and diffused chemicals form thick smoke that covers the atmosphere and makes it hard to see. Other sources of air pollution are aerosols, burning of garbage, factory gases, and exhausts. All these pollution sources give out carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other carbon and sulfur containing gases. Water pollution. Water is a major need for all living things. It is used in day-to-day activities as well as for many other activities. It is needed in huge quantities as a raw material for almost all the industries. Water pollution includes toxic pollutants that are let into large water bodies. This may be industrial effluents, sewage, untreated garbage, farm runoff that has chemical toxicants from pesticides and insecticides. Polluted water is harmful for use and also majorly affects the aquatic species living in the water bodies. Land pollution. Land pollution mainly occur when the huge amounts of garbage and other industrial wastes are being dumped. Unfiltrated garbage makes decomposition process more difficult. Separation of the garbage at a household stage will go a long way. Many towns and villages at the outskirts of the city are becoming garbage landfills. When untreated garbage is dumped, it not only affects the soil, but also the air and water of that region. Chemicals may seep into the soil and reach water sources and contaminate them. This can be very harmful to health of the inhabitants of those areas. Noise pollution. Noise pollution is caused by loud noises that can hurt the human ears. Types of noise pollution can include explosions, jet engines, and even concerts. Noise pollution is dangerous because it can cause loss in hearing. Radioactive pollution. When nuclear plants that have radioactive materials are not handled properly and the chemicals somehow leak and contaminate the nearby resources, it is called radioactive pollution. A big example is the Chernobyl incident. This kind of pollution has long-term effects and may cause diseases in generations and generations to come. Ways to minimize pollution. Conserve energy at home, at work, and everywhere. Look for the Energy Star label when buying home or office equipment. Carpool. Use public transportation, bike, or walk whenever possible. Follow gasoline refueling instructions for efficient vapor recovery. Be careful not to spill fuel and always tightening your gas cap securely. Keep car, boat, and other engines properly tuned. Be sure your tires are properly inflated. Use environmentally safe paint and cleaning products whenever possible. Compost leaves and yard waste. Segregate household waste. Make sure to use dustbins instead of littering the road. Refrain from using devices like speaker at the highest volume.
Thank you, Fahim. That was wonderful. Adhering to this year's theme of prioritizing environmental health for healthier communities and global recovery, we have Pranav, who is going to tell us about how COVID-19 is associated with environmental health.
Thank you, Srinidhi. Healthier environments could prevent almost one quarter of the global burden of diseases. The COVID-19 pandemic is a further reminder of the delicate relationship between people and our planet. Modern lifestyle, climate change, environmental degradation, exposure to chemicals such as endocrine disruptors, and exposure to psychological stress factors impact human health negatively. As a result, many people are in the disadvantageous position to face the pandemic with an already impaired immune system due to their exposure to environmental health hazards. Moreover, the ongoing pandemic has been associated with outdoor and indoor air pollution, water and noise pollution, food security, plastic pollution issues. Also, the inadequate infrastructure, the lack of proper waste and wastewater management, and the unequal social vulnerability relieve more linkages between environmental health and the COVID-19 pandemic. Starting from an intrauterine life period, humans are in constant exposure, willingly or not, to various endocrine-disrupting chemicals, mutagens, carcinogens, hazardous radiation, and psychological stress factors that interact with their immune system. Moreover, food and water security issues, climate change, as well as water, soil, and air pollution are only a few environmental factors with known determinal effects on human and animal health. A very important factor with a well-studied determinant effect in the respiratory system and overall physical state is the low quality of urban air. It is well known that aerosols carry pathogens attached to their surfaces. Moreover, particulate matter contributes to the pathogens of pulmonary and cardiovascular diseases and various types of cancer. Indeed, an association between urban air quality and COVID-19 morbidity and mortality has been already reported, increasing the concern about the potential aerosol transmission of COVID-19. The negative association may also be determined by other environmental factors such as meteorological conditions including temperature, wind speed, and air relative humidity. An international team of researchers found that daily emissions decreased by 17% or 17 million tons of carbon dioxide during the peak of the confinement measures in early April compared to the mean daily levels in 2019. The study published in Nature Climate Change is the first analysis of the effects of the coronavirus on global energy demands, covering 69 countries, 50 US states, 30 Chinese provinces, and 6 economic sectors. Emissions from surface transport such as car journeys account for more than half, that is 43%, of the decrease in global emissions during peak confinement on April 7th. Emissions from industry and from power together account for further 43% of the decrease in daily global emissions, while aviation, the economic sector most impacted by the lockdown, only accounts for the 10% of decrease in emissions during the pandemic. What does the future hold? According to the UN Environmental Programme, greenhouse gases must fall by at least 7.6% every year through 2030 to ensure that global warming rates are limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It was rightly predicted by the researchers that the drop in emission would only be temporary and the levels would rise as the economy goes back to normal, as the extreme decrease does not reflect structural changes in the economic, transport, or energy systems. The conclusion to draw is that we need systematic change through green energy and electric cars, not temporary reductions from enforced behavior. Moreover, due to the wide use of disinfectants, masks, and gloves, both the release of many chemical agents in the aquatic environment and plastic pollution are expected to increase greatly. The environmental footprint of the pandemic needs to be thoroughly assessed concurrently with its evolution, and appropriate interventions should be applied. For instance, biomonitoring of many chemical disinfectant agents in aquatic organisms may reveal new environmental health hazards and food security issues. Furthermore, another challenge to be met is the proper management of medical waste. This could amount to a significant emerging ecological risk to the natural ecosystems, especially in areas with no reliable waste management planning or with inadequate relevant infrastructure. Moreover, the potential transmission of COVID-19 through wastewater requires special attention. Close monitoring of household waste management should also continue. Let's talk about the impact on the community. Communicable and non-communicable diseases. Communicable diseases are those which can be transmitted from one person to another via air, water, or bodily fluid contact. Examples are COVID-19, typhoid, cholera, AIDS, etc. Non-communicable diseases are those which can't be transferred from one person to the other. They are usually lifestyle diseases like asthma, diabetes, etc. You might be wondering why we're talking about diseases suddenly. but studies have found that the environmental degradation has adverse effect on people. Environment-related illness. These are the various diseases that are caused by the environmental degradation. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, obesity, occupational injuries, arthritis, Parkinson's disease, malaria, dysentery, and depression. Environmental risk factors for disease. These are the reasons due to which the above diseases may be caused. Pollution. Air and water pollution causes many diseases. Contaminants in food. These contaminants are usually heavy metals discharged into water bodies by industries or remnants of pesticides used heavily during agriculture. According to the World Health Organization, more than 1.6 million deaths in 2016 were due to exposure to selected chemicals. Weather conditions. Frequent extreme weather conditions are now being seen throughout the world due to the global warming and climate change. Examples are temperatures reaching 50 degrees Celsius in places like British Columbia, Canada, or the blizzard in Texas, a place where it rarely snows. All these disrupt human lives and cause health issues like heat strokes or hypothermia. Radiation. Nuclear wars caused by us humans are the main cause of radiation poisoning. We all know the story of Japanese cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki and how the people had to suffer health consequences of an atom bomb, which include permanent disformities. Rise in new pathogens and hence new diseases. Deforestation drives many species which normally don't interact with humans straight to the human population. Example, Nipah virus spreading from bats to humans. Global warming has also caused a lot of permafrost to melt. A budding risk to be considered is that many bacterial and viral species which were previously frozen in the ice are now rising to the surface. In 2016, frozen anthrax bacteria which resurfaced to melting ice killed many reindeers and infected a dozen or so humans. However, it is being debated if it was the melting permafrost releasing the bacteria or not for sure. But it is still a risk to be considered, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. All in all, global environmental issues account for more than 12.6 million deaths each year, according to the WHO data. These can include soil pollution, ultraviolet radiation, and biodiversity loss. According to the data, more than 100 illness and injuries can be directly linked to the environmental health concerns. Other than the impact to personal health, all of these issues lead to a hit to the economy. This is because the working class is affected. Many of the young adult population constituting the workforce suffer from chronic diseases like asthma or CAD or cancer. This makes them unfit for labor. Hence, the productivity of the nation decreases. That would be all from my side. Over to Srinidhi. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. I think now we can all agree that we must protect the environment for us to lead a happy and healthy life. Moving on, I'm sure all of us have heard the words ozone layer depletion. But did you know that it not only affects humans but almost everything around us? If there was no ozone layer, the health of every single living being on planet Earth would be threatened. The depletion of ozone layer leads to an increased exposure to ultraviolet lights, which can cause many health problems. I now call upon Bhaskar to enlighten us about the ozone layer.
Thank you so much, Srinidhi. As she told about ozone depletion, we must look upon what is it actually. Ozone depletion is gradual thinning of Earth's stratosphere in the upper atmosphere caused by the release of chemicals containing gaseous chlorine and bromine from industry and other human activities. The thinning is most pronounced in polar regions, especially over Antarctica. Ozone depletion is a major environmental problem because it increases the amount of ultraviolet or UV radiations
that reaches Earth's surface. It increases the rate of skin cancer, eye cataracts, genetic and immune system damage. The Montreal Protocol, which was ratified in 1987, was the first of several comprehensive international agreements enacted to halt the production of use of ozone-depleting chemicals. As a result of continued international cooperation on this issue, the ozone layer is expected to recover over some time. Now, before we actually jump into some harmful effects of it, let us have a brief look at this issue's history and how this problem actually develops. Some scientists and environmentalists in the 1970s used Curzon research to assess the argument against the creation of a fleet American supersonic transport, or SSTs. They feared that the potential emission of nitrogen oxides and water vapor from these aircrafts would damage the ozone layer. In 1974, however, American chemists Marie Mellina and F. Sherwood Rowland of University of California at Irvine recognized that human-produced chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, contain only carbon, fluorine, and chlorine atoms, could be a major source of chlorine in the stratosphere. They also noted that chlorine could destroy extensive amount of ozone after it was liberated from CFCs by UV radiation. Human activities have had a significant effect on global concentration and distribution of stratospheric ozone since before the 1980s. In addition, scientists have noticed that the large annual decrease in average ozone concentrations began to only occur at least by 1980, the time of Industrial Revolution. Now we must look upon the ozone depletion process of how actually it takes place. First, we start with emission, of course. Halogen source gases are emitted at the Earth's surface by human activities and natural processes. Halogen source gases accumulate in the atmosphere and they are distributed throughout the lower atmosphere by winds and other air currents. Transportation takes place through air currents in the stratosphere. Most halogen sources gases are converted into stratosphere to reactive halogen gases in chemical reactions, which is aided by sun's UV radiation. Reactive halogen gases cause a chemical depletion of stratospheric total ozone over all parts of the globe except the tropical latitudes. The most affected is polar stratospheric clouds. Polar stratospheric clouds increase ozone depletion by providing surfaces upon which reactive halogen gases can burn, causing severe ozone loss in the polar regions in winter and spring. Lastly is the remover. Air containing reactive halogen gases return to troposphere, and these gases are removed from air by moisture in clouds and rain, which we commonly call as acid rain. Now we know the process by which ozone depletion occurs. We must see the catastrophe caused by it. First and foremost, human health. Ozone layer depletion increases the amount of UVB that reaches the Earth's surface. Laboratory and epidemiological studies demonstrate that UVB can cause non-melanoma skin cancer and plays a major role in malignant melanoma development. In addition, radiations has been linked to development of cataracts, a clouding of eye's lens. Short exposure to radiation can cause a DNA damage because UV radiations can disturb biomolecules such as lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Due to UV radiations, there will be cryptic transposable elements which may lead to worsen mutations, which is even more dangerous than immediate DNA damage. Excessive radiation exposure results in basal and squamous cell carcinomas. These type of cancers are induced due to transcriptional errors during DNA replications, which is caused by changing pyrimidine bases. The ultimate cause of this whole mechanism is found to be prolonged exposure to UV radiation. It is estimated that there is an increase of 2% of incidence of these cancers by 1% depletion of ozone layer. Exposure to UV radiations equally affect lungs. It causes bronchitis, obstruction of lungs, emphysema, asthma. These all can be related to UV radiation exposure. Because all sunlight contains some UVB, even with normal stratospheric ozone levels, it is always advisable to protect your skin and eyes from the sun. Moving on, let me throw some light on ill effects on plants. UV radiation affects the physiological development and process of plants. Despite mechanisms to reduce or repair these effects and an ability to adapt to increased levels of UVB, plant growth can still be directly affected by UV radiation. Indirect changes caused by UV, such as changes in plant form, how nutrients are distributed within the plant, timing of development phases, and secondary metabolites, may be equally or sometimes more important than damaging the effect of UVB. These changes can have important implications for plant competitive balance, herbivory, plant disease, and biogeochemical cycles. Taking the talk further, let's see the effects on agriculture as well, which is a bigger concern for a country like us. We are an agriculture-dependent country. The gas enters and leaves through the tiny openings called stomata. Environmental, biological, and cultural factors such as irrigation promote the stomatical openings and increase the risk of ozone injury to the plants. Ozone causes deleterious effects on plant photosynthesis as well as the rate of plant production, flowering, and yield. While the processes are not well understood, ozone can still influence the incidence of pathogens and pests. In addition to its effect on plant shoots, ozone is known to hurt carbon flow and to the root, and consequently reduce the root growth and the overall growth of plant as well. Next up are effects on marine ecosystems. Phytoplanktons form the foundation of aquatic food webs. Phytoplankton productivity is limited to the euphotic zone, the upper layer of water in which there is sufficient sunlight to support net productivity. Exposure to radiation has been shown to affect both orientation and motility in phytoplanktons, resulting in reduced survival rates of these organisms. Scientists have demonstrated a direct reduction in phytoplankton production due to ozone depletion related increase in UVB. UV radiations have been found to cause damage to early development stages of fish, shrimp, crab, amphibians, and other marine animals. The most severe effects are decreased productivity capacity and impaired larval development. Small increase in UVB exposure could result in population reduction for small marine organisms with implication for the whole marine food chain. If ozone layer depletion reaches 15% over temperate waters, it would take less than 5 days in summer for half the zooplankton in the top meter of these waters to die from increased radiation. Additionally, large amounts of young fish, shrimp, and crabs would die before even reaching the reproductive ages. Less food would be available for adult fish and other higher forms of marine life, and therefore eventually affecting human consumption. This is of particular relevance, as more than 30% of the world's animal protein for human consumptions comes from the sea. One study of phytoplankton estimates that 25% reduction in ozone would lead to a 10% loss in primary production throughout the sunlit, biologically rich upper layer of the ocean, and 35% reduction near the surface of the water. Even highly regulated biogeochemical cycles are also affected. We must look at it. Increase in UV radiation could affect terrestrial and aquatic biogeochemical cycles, thus altering both sources and sinks of greenhouse and chemically important trace gases. Examples are carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon sulfide, ozone, and possibly other gases as well. These potential changes would contribute to biosphere-atmosphere feedbacks that mitigate or amplify the atmospheric concentration of these gases. We might think that only natural sources are mainly affected by ozone layer depletion, but this is not the case. Naturally occurring biopolymers, as well as some other materials of commercial interest, are also adversely affected by UVB radiation. Today's materials are somewhat protected from UVB by special additives, yet increase in this radiation will accelerate their breakdown, limiting the length of the time for which the ozone endures. Next topic is probably the most discussed among all, global warming. Global warming is a gradual heating of Earth's surface, oceans, and atmosphere. It is caused by human activity, primarily the burning of fossil fuels that pump carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse into the atmosphere. With exponential rise in energy consumptions, humans have become a force of nature. Clearly, this is a topic of enormous political, socio-economic, and emotional dimensions. But the scientific results show clearly that human activities, particularly the consumption of fossil fuels, are altering the climate system. Human-driven changes in land use and land cover such as deforestation, urbanization, and shifts in vegetative patterns also alter the climate, resulting in climate changes to reflectivity of the Earth's surface. Emissions from burning forests, urban heat island effects, and changes in natural water cycle. Because the primary cause of the recent global climate change is human, the solutions also lies within us. Because we understand the cause of climate change, that paves the way of effective solutions to be developed and deployed. The disastrous impact of global warming has led to many major issues. We cover 3 of them. The first of is poor air quality. Climate change can impact air quality, and conversely, air quality can impact climate change. Change in climate can result in local air quality as well. Atmospheric warming associated with climate change has the potential to increase ground level ozone in many regions, which may present challenges for compliance with the ozone standards in the future. The impact of climate change and other pollutants such as particulate matter is less certain, but research is underway to address these uncertainties. Emissions of pollutants into the air can result into changes of climate. Ozone in the atmosphere warms the climate, while different components of the particulate matter, also called the PM, can have either warming or cooling effects on the climate. For example, black carbon, a particulate pollutant from combustion, contributes to the warming of Earth while particulate sulfates cools the atmosphere. According to WHO, 6 major pollutants include particulate pollution, ground-level ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxides, and lead. Long and short-term consequence and exposure to air suspended toxicants has a different toxicological impact on humans, including respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, neuropsychiatric complications as well, the eyes irritation, skin disease, and long-term chronic disease such as cancer. Several reports have revealed the direct association between exposure to poor air quality and increasing the rate of morbidity and mortality, mostly due to cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. Air pollution is considered as a major environmental risk in the incidence and progression of some diseases such as asthma, lung cancer, vertical hypertrophy, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Several other psychological complications such as autism, retinopathy, fetal growth, and low birth weight can also be associated with it. Next up is water shortage, which is definitely a result of global warming. Changing climate has significant impact in water, direct or indirect, leading to serious social and economic issues in highly vulnerable countries like India. Millions of poor are struggling to live with low adaptive capacity, fast diminishing reliable water sources, large-scale wetland degradation, and unsustainable water management. Fail in surface water availability due to changing rainfall pattern increases dependency on groundwater. Groundwater level has been receding at an alarming rate in many parts of India as a result of over-extraction and changing seasonality and intensity of rainfall. By the late 21st century, climate change is likely to increase the frequency and intensity of drought, and the large part of the globe may be experiencing famine. Food scarcity and food quality issues also affect mental health. In addition to agriculture, possible crisis in the inland fishery sector is also a threat to food security. Aquatic species are generally more sensitive to water temperatures, and the stratification of water bodies can be impacted by climate change, affecting fish growth and viability. The WHO warns that increasingly variable rainfall patterns are likely to affect the supply of fresh water. A lack of safe water can compromise hygiene and increase the risk of diarrheal diseases, which kills over 500,000 children every year. Shortage of reliable water often leads to disputes over water sharing in transboundary water resources. Existing water disputes are likely to worsen, and new disputes are likely to ignite. Issues are many and many, and it is our duty to come together and make them a thing of past for a future generation. Thank you so much, everyone. Over to Srinidhi now.
There seems to be some technical glitch, so we'll be taking a small break and resume shortly. Kindly stay tuned. Thank you so much for waiting. Sorry for that inconvenience. I'd now like to call upon Divya to talk about solid waste management and why it's so important and why we must all pay heed to it.
Thank you, Srinidhi. I'll be discussing an important topic which is known as solid waste management. Due to the rapid and continuous increase in the population, the amount of waste generated is increasing day by day. Moreover, the increase in the amount of waste is affecting human lives. Take, for instance, the people who are living in the slums. They are very close to the waste disposal region of a city. So they are more prone to numerous types of diseases, thus putting their lives at risk. To retain a healthy life, proper hygiene and sanitation are very necessary. Here's where waste management comes in. Waste management is basically the process of managing unwanted garbage by disposing and recycling it. But we need proper methods to do this, keeping in mind the environment conditions in our surroundings. Some of these methods are landfills, recycling, and composting. And recycling and composting happen to be one of those methods which are actually good for the environment. And I'd like to discuss all of these in detail now. So number one is recycling. Above all, it is the most essential method for the management of waste because this method doesn't make use of any extra resources but rather makes use of the waste itself. Therefore, this is more useful in the management of waste as compared to other techniques. Landfills are, however, the most common method of waste disposal today. The trash gets suppressed in huge pits in the ground and then it is covered by a layer of mud. As a result, the garbage decomposes under the pit over the years. Composting is the process of converting organic waste into manures. This technique increases the fertility of the soil, which is important for plant growth. So this method greatly benefits the environment. So what do we achieve out of this solid waste management methods? One is the decreasing of bad smells. Waste or garbage produces a lot of bad smells which are very harmful to the environment. Moreover, bad odor is responsible for various diseases in children. As a result, it affects their growth and development, which gets delayed. So waste management excludes all of these problems effectively. Secondly, waste management reduces pollution. Waste is one of the major causes of environmental degradation. For instance, the waste from industries and households pollutes the rivers and lakes and even our streets. So, it is important that waste management is done to decrease the pollution in our immediate surroundings. Waste management also generates employment. The waste management system needs so many workers to do a variety of steps. Jobs starting from collecting to disposing of waste and garbage. Therefore, it generates opportunities for the people that are unemployed. So in conclusion, we should always try to dispose of waste in a way so that the waste management people can handle it and recycle it properly. We should always cooperate to maintain a clean and green society. Now, coming to another important topic that I will be discussing, which is how something as important as food production is causing damage to the environment. The increase in population brought about a need to produce more and more food, whether it be through agriculture or animal husbandry or fishing. For a while, modern technology and its ability to drastically increase food production was a matter of relief. But of late, we have come to the realization that current agriculture and food production techniques have brought a lot of harm to the climate, land, and our oceans due to the use of unnatural and synthetic resources and the emission of greenhouse gases, which alter the water, carbon, and nitrogen cycles and threaten the fertility, health, and biodiversity of landscapes. I'd like to explain these points through various case studies and examples. The first one being the degradation of the Amazon rainforest. Did you know that the Amazon rainforest now emits more carbon dioxide than it actually absorbs? So the Amazon used to be a chief sink for carbon emissions over the past decades. However, with the clearing of the rainforest via fires, it is now emitting more carbon dioxide than it absorbs. Currently, the Amazon produces 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to Japan's annual emissions. Many of the fires are deliberately set to clear the land for agriculture, especially for soy farming and cattle ranching. The soy and beef are exported to European nations. Now, I'd like to show you this pie chart, and here you can clearly see how much of the deforestation takes place. Nearly 63-64% of the deforestation takes place just to make room for agriculture and cattle ranching. So what happens to all of these cattle that are ranched? They are used for meat, of course, and the soy is also exported to countries in Europe, like the United Kingdom. Now, recently it was revealed that UK grocery chains were actually using some of the products which were produced by illegal deforestation of the Amazon. Of course, all of this deforestation is only going to bring about land degradation in Brazil, because the productivity decreases when rainfall is not there, and the lack of rainforest also brings about heat waves. so which all of these reduce soil quality. Another thing is, of course, the synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, as well as a new form of growing crops which is known as monoculture. Monoculture is when large stretches of land are farmed with only one type of crop. This leads to decreased organic matter in soil, degraded soil culture, increased soil erosion, increased sedimentation of reservoirs, and increased contamination of groundwater. It also leads to biodiversity loss because nothing is allowed to grow except that one crop. And since only one type of plant can't sustain a variety of animals, many animal species are also lost. The second example that I want to bring is overfishing. Overfishing first in Argentina, then we look into New Zealand. So in Argentina, salmon fishing arrived after the industry took a hit in the neighboring country of Chile. The species is not native to either countries and hence they are farmed. However, overfarming of salmon in the region led to the fish escaping into natural waters, which disbalanced the ecosystem of the place because salmon lacks any natural predators in the area, and so it started competing with the native species for nutrition as well as space. In March 2018, Argentina announced a partnership with Norway, the country which produces the most amount of salmon, to study the feasibility of developing Argentina's own salmon industry in the Beagle Channel in the Tierra del Fuego archipelago. Environmentalists started expressing huge concerns because they were afraid that the mistakes that were made in Chile, which were invasion by foreign species, that is salmon, pollution from farms' waste, food and feces, as well as the overuse of antibiotics would be repeated again in Argentina. However, the good news here is that the Tierra del Fuego residents, along with the neighboring Chilean communities, environmental non-profits, and even the clothing brand Patagonia, started to campaign to halt this project. So what happened was that in 2019, it was put on temporary halt, and in June 2021, provincial leader Pablo Villegas and Vice Governor Monica Urquiza presented a bill to finally ban the salmon industry, and this bill, we are fortunate to say, is that it was unanimously approved. However, this is not the scenario in the next country I'm going to talk about, which is New Zealand. New Zealand has marketed itself as a nation with sustainable fisheries, but that is only because they have been underreporting their catches over the past 6 decades. In reality, their catch is 2.7 times higher than reported. In addition, the fishery industries of New Zealand is rife with illegal catches, dumping, and killing endangered marine species. Fishing operations have killed two-thirds of the endangered Hector's dolphins and more than 95% of endangered Maui's dolphins, whose population is only 63 today. So, what can we do? What are some of the solutions that we have at hand? Well, one of the best solutions is reducing meat intake and choosing a plant-based alternative whenever possible. Another practice to be followed is trying to locally source food as much as possible. Locally sourced food is often not mass-produced and hence makes less use of chemicals. Hence, biodiversity and land are protected. Travel time is reduced, as is the fuel. Local produce mostly includes fruits and vegetables which are in season, so they're healthier and tastier as well. It's not always possible to buy local stuff, so if we are buying canned foods from supermarkets and stores, it is advisable to do a research into the manufacturing companies to avoid contributing to the problem, as was the case in the UK grocery stores. It is also time to admit that individual action is not going to solve the problem 100%, especially without government support. Such was the case in Argentina, right? People's advocacy wouldn't have solved the problem if the government had ultimately not stepped up and banned salmon fishing. This can be seen in Brazil, where environmentalists have been advocating for so long but with little change because the government refuses to change its policy on the deforestation of the Amazon. However, it is now time to hold accountable the people who are in power. We must make it clear to the legislators that environment health is an issue that citizens deeply care about. Only then can permanent change take place. Corporations must also be held accountable by subjecting them to environmental taxes and sustainable laws. That's all from my side. Thank you for your time. Over to Srinidhi.
Thank you, Divya. That was quite mind-boggling. Really gets us thinking about how every small action can affect the environment. Moving on, environmental ethics has become a hot topic of the modern era. Gone are the days of our natural surroundings being an afterthought. We as a society are now fully aware of the natural habitat in which we are a part of, what it does for us, and what we can do for it. This is significant as the recognition was, for the most part, absent until just a few decades ago. This is one of the reasons why we must learn to lead a sustainable life. We must think about all our actions and how they may change the future. Now, I call upon Karthik to talk about the sustainability and environmental ethics.
Thank you, Srinidhi. Now, I would like to speak about environmental ethics. Environmental ethics is a branch of ethics that studies the relation of human beings and the environment and how ethics play a role in this. Environmental ethics believes that humans are a part of society as well as other living creatures, which includes plants and animals. These items are a very important part of the world and are considered to be a functional part of human life. Therefore, it is essential that every human being respected and honor this and use morals and ethics when dealing with these creatures. Global warming, global climate change, deforestation, pollution, resource degradation, threat of extinction are few of the issues from which our planet is suffering. Environmental ethics are a key feature of environmental studies that establishes the relationship between humans and earth. With environmental ethics, you can ensure that you are doing your part to keep the environment safe and protected. Every time that a tree is cut down to make a home or other resources are used, we are using natural resources that are becoming more and more sparse to find. It is essential that you do your part to keep the environment protected and free from danger. It is not difficult to do as you may think so, long as you are willing to make a few simple and easy changes. With the rapid increase in the world's population, the consumption of natural resources has increased several times. This has degraded our planet's ability to provide the services we humans need. The consumption of resources is going at a faster rate than they can naturally replenish. Environmental ethics builds on scientific understanding by bringing human values, more principles, and improved decision making into conversion with science. Sustainability extends justice into the future. Sustainability can be defined as the meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. We are consuming or degrading many resources today faster than they can be naturally replenished, which means that they will not be available to people in the future. The ethical principle of justice is at play because it underpins the need of equitable balance, the need of those who are alive today with future generations. Thus, environmental ethics takes the notion of fundamental fairness and stretches it to include those yet to be born. Today, environmental problems have reached very important and serious levels. Destroyed nature and contaminated earth by people day to day reveals this reality in the best way. People are responsible for the creation of this negative picture. However, people are dependent on their environment for living like all other creatures and also helpless against the environmental problems caused by themselves. Deterrent laws and fines are also inadequate for the prevention of environmental problems. People need to be conscious about environment more than anything else. In this respect, environmental ethics education will be able to guide them and the community members becoming more conscious by environmental ethics education can question their relationship with the environment again and behave more equitable friendly environment. Next, environmental ethics and its principles. First, resourcism. The principle of resourcism says that the nature is considered to be valuable only because it has resources to provide with. Thus, nature ought to be exploited. Second, anthropocentrism. It suggests that human beings are the most important beings. All other living beings are but accessories that would assist in their survival. Now, these are the two further divisions of anthropocentrism. They are weak and strong. while weak one believes that human beings are the center because it is only through their perspective that environmental situations can be interrupted. Strong anthropocentrism, however, believes that human beings are at the center because they rightfully deserve to be there. Peter Vandy made this distinction. Third, non-anthropocentrism. It is just opposite to anthropocentrism. This principle gives value to the every object, every animal in the nature. It is a principle that believes in everything that sustains itself in nature. Fourth, biocentrism. It is a term that holds not only an ecological but also a political value. It is a philosophy that imparts importance to all living beings. In terms of environmental ethics, biocentrism is the principle that ensures the proper balance of ecology on the planet. Thank you. Thank you all. I would like to pass over to Srinidhi.
Thank you, Karthik. As it is said, sustainable development is the masterful balance of meeting our own needs without jeopardizing our future's ability to do the same. In the process of urbanization, industries are degrading the environment with their continuous use of natural resources. Human survival has been brought under threat due to environmental degradation, due to the increasing population, economic development, and deforestation. With increase in vehicle and industries, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and etc. are polluting the earth, which has led to an escalation in the temperature. Greenhouse gases have resulted in the melting of ice caps, leading to a rise in the sea level. All the problems we are facing right now are as a result of overexploitation of the environment for years. Rohan is now going to talk about sustainable development and how we may be able to change the fate of our future generations.
Thank you, Srinidhi. So here we are going now to talk about sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The concept of sustainable development can be interpreted in many different ways, but at its core, it's an approach to development that looks to balance different and often competing needs against an awareness of the environmental, social, and economic limitations we face as a society. All too often, development is driven by one particular need without fully considering the wider or the future impacts. We are already seeing the damage this kind of approach is causing to us. The longer we pursue unsustainable development, the more frequent and severe its consequences are likely to become. Which is why we need to take action now. Sustainable development is about finding better ways of doing things, both for the future and the present. We might need to modify the way we work, the way we live, but this doesn't mean our quality of life will be reduced. Focusing on environment conservation, we only have one planet on which we live. The planet is full of resources, some renewable and some not. But unfortunately, we have an ever-growing population that possesses a huge threat to all of these resources. It is therefore unclear what future generations will find, if ever, and what life will be like for them if we exploit all the current resources for just our sake. Environmental conservation is the practice of us humans saving the environment from the loss of species and the destruction of the ecosystem, primarily due to pollution and human activities. Conservation is vital in saving and helping both animals and trees as we are all dependent on one another for survival. So, environmental conservation is key to sustainability for us. We all know about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. This part of the waste hierarchy, which is a process used to protect the environment and conserve resources through a priority approach. The aim is to get the most practical benefits from products and to generate the minimum amount of waste. This approach also triggers other positive externalities such as resource savings, pollution reduction, and avoidance of greenhouse gas emissions. development of sustainable technologies, and creation of jobs also. This is what's all about reduce, reuse, recycle. Let's explore it more. Reduce. Waste reduction and waste prevention is all about reducing waste at the source. In terms of waste management, it's always the best option. Waste is often due to the inefficient use of the resources or the bad planning. So we have to reduce it. Reuse. Reuse means using a product more than once, either for the same purpose or for a different purpose. Repairing products, selling them or donating them to charity, community groups is also reusing. Recycle. Recycling is a way to manage waste materials once they have been generated. If they can't be reused, it prevents waste from being sent to landfill and make waste into new goods or products. This involves turning the old material into a new version of the same thing or into something completely different. Now let's get to the fourth R, that is recover. After we have reused, reduced, recycled, including composting also, as much as possible, the rubbish left can be used to generate heat and power. This is known as recovery. Different types of rubbish are best suited to different types of treatment, which can in turn create different types of energy from biogas to electricity. So here we conclude. Thank you and over to Srinidhi.
Thank you to all the speakers. So we've spoken about so many topics today, from objectives of this day to COVID, to ozone and global warming and sustainability. As we've heard from all our speakers, the main take back is that environmental health is the need of the hour. It must be preserved for humans to live and grow. May it be planting trees, segregating waste, carpooling, recycling, or simply switching off a tube light. We must all do our part for conserving this beautiful planet. We're now open for any questions that you may have. You can make use of the chat box to post your queries.
So first of all, answering to Priyanshu's question. So how can ecology? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So how can ecology be profitable? So far, humans have managed to gain profit through the indiscriminate use of resources. Now we realize that it's gonna help us. So eco companies need to gain an edge in the market by transcending to all fields like transport, agriculture, green energy, etc. They need to be extremely competitive and appealing to the masses by being affordable to the profitable also. So I hope did you understand?
Thank you. I have another question here from Yoshita. Are carbon price-based markets green markets? If not, why are we going that way?
Carbon pricing is basically factoring in the cost of emissions produced. Believe it or not, the cost of pollution is actually quite high. If properly implemented, it might shift more people to cleaner energies. So I think this might be that.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik. Okay, I have another question from Ashay Kumar. How can ecology be profitable?
Yeah, it's already answered by replying to the same question.
Right, okay, sorry. Okay, I have a question from Shubh. Which category of particulate matter is most harmful to human health?
May I answer? Yeah, there's something called coarse particles. It is also called PM10. It can irritate your eyes, nose, and throat. You know, like dust from roads, farms, dry riverbeds, construction sites, and all. Those are types of PM10. But there are other particles, like smaller particles, which are called PM2.5, which are more dangerous because they can get deep into your lungs and all, and even into your blood. So I guess PM2.5 or small particles are more injurious to human health. I hope that answers.
Thank you, Pranav. I have a question from Arushi. Do you think COVID-19 will lead to a new age of environmental behaviors?
Yeah, once again, can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think people did get a taste of what cleaner environment feels like. Blue skies, fresh air, and all. So maybe they will be more motivated to keep it that way. And as we know, permanent drop in emissions is very much required. So governments will probably bring in more policies to guide the population along. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. I have another question from Megha. How should the use of non-renewable natural resources be reduced so that sustainable ecological development is possible?
Okay, so the answer for Megha question is you already know that reducing our reliance on non-renewable sources and expanding our renewable energy source is one of the keys to a sustainable future. For this reason, it's important to promote alternative energy sources, including renewable sources like solar and wind power, electric vehicles. Let's take an example for the most popular and polluting non-renewable resource, that is fossil fuels. That is a daily life product, should be avoided, and the use of electric and hybrid vehicles should be promoted. And as we know that it's the future, so I hope that Mega would have understood.
Thank you. Okay, I see another question from Harsha. How to increase the effectiveness of environmental protection programs, natural ecosystems, and biodiversity?
Yeah. So coming to Harsha's question, like the simple answer to this would be education. Because a self-aware person always tries to make the correct decision and tries to better the society. So once a society learns to deeply care about the environmental issues around them, policies become more effective. It is not like the government passes rule and we just follow it. We have to make it implemented, right? So who knows? Maybe policies won't even work. We as a society needs to come up to a solution, look around us, what exactly is the problem, and work together for it. So that is the only feasible way and effective way to counter all of the issues right now. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Priyanshu asks, what are the challenges for organic farming and its commercialization?
Srinidhi, I'll be taking that question. So basically, organic farming is the need of the hour. We need to find more sustainable methods to do our farming. But one of the biggest challenges here is that we need trained workforce. Finding workforce who are trained in organic farming can be quite difficult at the moment, and so we need to invest more in this. We need to invest more in the organic farming business itself, as well as training investment to train the workforce. So that is one of the biggest challenges we are facing in the process of commercializing organic farming. I hope Priyanshu gets the answer to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions, guys? Audience? Okay, I don't see any more questions. I think we can go for the vote of thanks. So thank you, speakers. That was a very inspiring and informative session. I would like to thank the entire organizing team for working tirelessly on the back end to deliver this event to us. I would also like to thank our faculty coordinators for giving us this opportunity to conduct such an informative and insightful event, and the publicity department for helping in the process throughout. Last but not least, I am sincerely grateful to all the attendees of today's session and helping in making this event a great success. The attendance form for the event has been linked in the description box. Do fill the form and answer the questions. We would love to hear from you and give valuable feedback, which will motivate us as well as help improve ourselves for future events. For further updates, do follow our Instagram handle, YRC_VIT. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
I can see a question from Pratish. Should social media portals be used to promote nature conservation? So yes, now in this pandemic, we are now have a last option to use this social media to promote the nature conservation, and we are now in the situation that we have to promote here, because all of the things are going from hand, and we have to do it to conserve. It's the only planet we are living, so we have to do and conserve it anyhow. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you, everybody, for attending this session.